Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our History Makers Plenary. We have the high honor and great privilege of having with us three North Carolina Black Alliance history makers today. They are indeed founders of what was known as the North Carolina Alliance of Black Elected Officials, now the North Carolina Black Alliance. I would like to take a moment of personal privilege to thank them for their vision, diligence, and dedication to service to the people of this great state in general and communities of color in particular. Thank you all. Our theme is Focus on the Fight, Facing the Future. We know that the struggle continues for voting rights, fairness in the criminal justice system, income inequality, racial and gender equality, and environmental justice, among other social ills. So we welcome your views on these issues to start off our summit. We have with us Commissioner Viola Harris. She is a commissioner in Edgecombe County. Ms. Viola Harris has been an Edgecombe County Commissioner since 2001. In addition to serving as a county commissioner, she has been employed full-time as an administrative assistant at Edgecombe Community College in the College and Career Readiness Department in Rocky Mount for 10 years. Prior to being appointed and then elected to the Board of Commissioners, she worked as a news and sports reporter for the Rocky Mount Telegram for 10 years and the Daily Southerner for 5 years. Harris is also the First Lady at Leggett Chapel Missionary Baptist Church, where her husband, Mitchell Harris, serves as the pastor. She has been a member of Salem Chapel Missionary Baptist Church for 52 years, where she serves as president of the senior choir and secretary of the home mission. Ms. Harris and her husband have three daughters, Tanisha, Crystal, and Shanika, and one lovely granddaughter, Camille. Commissioner Harris was born and raised in Leggett, North Carolina, and graduated salutatorian from North Edgecombe High School in 1976. She received a secretarial science degree from Edgecombe Community College in 1978. Harris is a dedicated member of her community and our state. We also have with us Moses Carey. Moses Carey Jr. grew up in Tampa, Florida, and has resided in Chapel Hill, North Carolina since 1971. Moses graduated from Middleton High School in 1963 after playing football for the Tigers and attended college on a football scholarship. Moses earned his BS degree in health and physical education at Fort Valley State College, now University, in Georgia in 1967, and a master's degree in public health administration at the University of North Carolina School of Public Health in 1972. He earned a law degree at North Carolina Central University of Law in 1980 and became a member of the North Carolina Bar in 1981. He served as an administrator and clinical assistant professor in the UNC School of Public Health, where he taught health law in the Department of Health Policy and Administration from 1981 to 1994. He served as executive director of Piedmont Health Services, Inc. for 18 years until he retired in December of 2004. Moses was appointed in January 2009 by Governor Bev Perdue to chair the North Carolina Employment Security Commission. In March of 2010, he was appointed by Governor Perdue as Secretary of the State Department of Administration, which serves as the business manager for the state. He served as secretary until Governor Perdue left office in January 2013. Moses was elected to the Orange County Board of County Commissioners in 1984 and completed his sixth and final term after 24 years in December of 2008. In 1993, he was elected to serve as president of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. At that time, he became the first African American to serve as president of the association. Moses is a member of First Baptist Church and is married to Peggy Ann Richmond and has 3 children and 4 grandchildren. And finally, Brad Thompson. Brad Thompson is the former president of BTA Public and Governmental Relations, a small consulting firm located in Raleigh, North Carolina. The focus of his company was developing competency in advocacy and nonprofit organizations in reaching established goals and financial stability. Brad has more than 30 years of corporate and government experience. A Herbert Lehman Foundation scholar and an engineering graduate of North Carolina State University, he has held a stellar career as an administrator for some of the world's largest corporations, including IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and Compaq, and Westinghouse Corporation. He has also served as a bureau chief for OSHA, under former Labor Commissioner Harry Payne, and as special assistant to former state auditor Ralph Campbell. After many years as a community advocate, serving on over 30 boards and commissions, including chair of the Raleigh Community Relations Committee in 1975 and 76, and the past president of the Wake Citizens Association, Brad was elected in 1993 as a city councilman in Raleigh, representing the Southeast area. He was elected mayor pro tem in his first year and was called the very definition of an effective councilman by the Raleigh News and Observer. After 3 terms, he elected not to run and became the state director for the U.S. Senator John Edwards, one of only 2 African Americans to serve in that capacity in the country. Brad has been co-chair of the Southeast Raleigh Assembly, a group of 41 citizens that seeks to improve economic conditions and quality of life for those residing in the Southeast area of the city. He has also served with the Museum of National History, Vice Chair of the Agency for Public Telecommunications, Treasury of Democracy NC, Blueprint, and Chair Progress NC Action. He is a member of the South Central CAC and president of the Raleigh Wake Citizens Association. He is also a life member of the NAACP. Brad retired in 2012, but continues to be active in community affairs. He has been married to Dorothy Shaw Thompson since 1968, and they have 4 adult children. And again, welcome to all of our panelists.
Thank you.
So I would like to ask first that each of you would share briefly with us your motivation for establishing this organization and convening this 15-year event. Let's start with Commissioner Harris.
What can I say? These 2 gentlemen that you just finished talking about can convince you to do just about anything. When I first became a commissioner, I was what they call thirsty. I wanted to know exactly what a commissioner was supposed to do. So I made sure that I connected myself with the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. Then I found out about the Black elected officials. So the first thing I wanted to do was get in touch with the man who had the plan, who was Moses Carey. And listening to Moses explain why we needed this alliance is part of the reason that I joined and remained there this long time. It gave us an avenue to connect with all 100 county Black elected officials who wanted to make a difference in the lives of their community. And so that's what we were all about. And it has kept me thirsty all this time to continue to make sure that somebody's out there fighting for our constituents.
And Leader Carey.
Well, I believe we organized the Alliance in around 2005. We started talking about organizing the Alliance in 2006. We started talking about it in 2005 and actually organized the Alliance and held our first summit in 2006. And my primary motivation was because at the time I was chairperson of the North Carolina Association of Black County Officials, of which Viola was an active member, and couldn't have done my job in that organization without her, because she was a vital cog in helping us to carry on that organization back in those days. But my primary motivation for trying to initiate the Alliance was because I became aware of the fact that the Black elected officials in this state did not communicate across their local government lines. And so we had no common view or vision of what we needed to do or what we could do on behalf of the Black community. So, I actually got a few people to work with me, from the mayors, from the municipal elected officials, from the education board members who were African Americans, to meet one day. And that included Brad and Ralph Campbell, who were probably more in contact with most of the people from these different organizations than the rest of us were. And my primary motivation was to stimulate a dialogue about a vision for where we wanted to go in the Black community, and to increase the number of African-American Black elected officials at the local level. And the only way I could do that was to work through the organizations that were already in existence. And that was my primary motivation, to stimulate dialogue about a common vision and to increase the number of Black elected officials at the local level.
And Leader Thompson.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I need to say, Viola has been committed since the beginning, and that without Moses, there would not be an alliance, because Moses put up the money with the commissioners. And had he not done that, we couldn't have gone anywhere. But I would say in 2005, 15 years passes fast. I can tell you that. And I would tell you that what we were not satisfied with the pace of progress. Black people were everywhere. We had Black elected officials. We had advocates like the NAACP and the Black teachers and the FLCIO. We had Black people everywhere. ARP, Black Leadership Caucus. All of these advocates were trying to make things better, but they were not. The pace was slow. I would say there had been progress, but it had not been transformative. We were still struggling with racism. We were still struggling with prejudice. It seemed like no matter what we did, we were still facing some of the same problems. So by joining together, I think our effort was to try to move things faster. And that's where we started. Moses and Viola may remember this, but the biggest thing we had, whether we were going to call ourselves African Americans or Black, and the people there finally said, well, if we're going to stand for Black people, we need to call ourselves Black. And that was our first discussion. Do y'all remember that?
I remember that vividly, and I'm happy to say that the view that I took about what we should call ourselves won the day. And of course, I wasn't the only one who had that view, because we had people all over the yard as to what we wanted to call ourselves. And that was typical of the kind of agendas we had. Each organization had a different agenda about, what we wanted to do to improve the lives of the people who lived in the Black community. And so we thought that we would accomplish more and do it faster if we had a common view. That doesn't mean that we were all going to be lockstep in the direction that we go, but we at least needed to know what was on each other's agenda to try to develop some continuity in where we were headed.
And I would add that we thought everybody was important, whether you were the elected official, whether you were a congressman or you picked up paper in the yard in your neighborhood, you were important. You made a contribution. And so we never thought that we were just more important than anybody else. Everybody that made a contribution was important to making things better.
So that helps us to move into my first question, because certainly voting rights were a struggle then and they continue to be so. So how do you feel about Black elected officials? How should they respond to the accelerating attempts by state legislatures to deny and suppress the right to vote? Let's start with Leader Thompson on this one.
Well, I think, I got on this hat, Black Lives Matter. But I would say that it's important that we continue to fight. Your agenda this year, your theme is fight, and it's not over. When I was 12 years old, I first got involved in this stuff. I thought, it would be over. But it looks like I'm going to leave this earth, and it's going to still be work to be done. So I would say the voting is very important, and I think Black elected officials who are charged with representing people need to do everything they can to make sure that people have a right to vote.
And Leader Carey.
Well, I think the most important thing we can do is make sure that people in the Black community have the information they need to know what people are trying to do to prevent them from voting. And I think that just the knowledge alone about what people are doing to try to deny African Americans the right to vote is enough to motivate African Americans to get out and vote. And I think it has done that in some ways, and it will continue to do that, because this effort to withdraw or deny, reduce the access to the ballot has been going on for years. It was going on when we formed the alliance, and so we wanted to get the word out to people in the communities who were affected so that they would know what was happening to them and can increase their efforts along with other people in the community, because the information about what's happening comes best and means more when it comes from people in the community where people live, and because they'll listen to people who are like them more than they will from people who are outside the community. So that's the most important thing that we can continue to do, because this effort to deny us the right to vote and access to the polls will continue. And it has accelerated since the Obama administration was elected, and it will continue to accelerate as this country continues to change its character in the complexion of the people who make up the majority of the population. In other words, as this nation gets more brown and Black, the efforts to decrease and deny access to the polls will accelerate.
Commissioner Harris, your thoughts?
It's really interesting. I was just looking through, I was a secretary under Moses. So of course I still have all of my reports. I still have a letter that he sent on October 26, 2007, expressing how important it was for us to gain the victory of same-day voter registration. So we've been fighting this fight for a long time to to get them to understand how important voting is. And as he said, as a senior, almost a senior citizen now, we've got to make sure our young people understand we've been fighting this fight so that you have the opportunity to vote for the candidate who will best serve your community. So I've really been upset that looks like we're marching backwards as much as we gain forward. It looks like there's still some who want to keep us at the back door. We've got to continue to fight that because voting is our privilege and we fought for it.
Thank you for that. Economic development. President Biden is calling on Congress to pass a $2 trillion package for infrastructure called the American Jobs Plan. How do you feel this will help to empower economic development for Black Americans in North Carolina? Let's start with Leader Carey on this one.
Well, I think that the effort to get this bill passed is monumental, and it will change the lives of people in this country, not just Black people, but everyone for many years to come. Because the things that he's proposing that we invest in are things that affect each and every person on a daily basis. And it certainly will increase the opportunity for African Americans to increase the number of businesses they form. It will provide support for them to form new businesses and provide some access to capital that African Americans need in order to form and maintain their businesses. Because without capital, it's hard for you to start and sustain a new business. So many of the things that are considered to be infrastructure that are included in the proposed bill will affect many of the people in this country for years to come, because it has a broad base of definitions for what we might call infrastructure that goes beyond what the previous narrow description of infrastructure was considered to be.
Commissioner Harris.
As Moses was talking about, it will give some of our small businesses opportunities to get on contracts. Also, as he said, to establish a business. We have so many of our Black contractors who just need a leg up to really establish themselves, to be ready to take on big projects. And we have so many bridges and roads that need repair. And those will be employees in every county across the nation and get those jobs. And also water and sewer in a lot of counties who haven't established a water sewer project. We've done so in Edgecombe County. Everybody has access to water. But it will be dollars in the pocket of Black people who have just been waiting for an opportunity to use their skills and to help build these communities. So I'm excited and hopeful that this package will pass.
And Leader Thompson.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with what's been said. I think one of the remnants of slavery is that we don't have much money. So that means that a lot of times we have to spend a lot of our resources to do the things that matter to families everywhere. I mean, we want our parents to be treated as well as white parents would want that to be treated. But sometimes, it requires a lot more money. So I think that this package reflects that poor people want the same thing for their families as other people. So therefore, the resources are made available in a wide variety of infrastructure things to try to level the playing field so that we do not have to suffer because we don't have as much resources. But I think everybody in this country deserves to be treated fairly and with integrity and to be respected. So I think this program helps a lot in those areas.
Thank you
Another
for those.
another
Sure.
vestige of slavery, Brad, is the fact that this country has denied or refused to make investments in the maintenance of facilities, structures, especially in the Black community, but even in the broader community, we have abandoned uh, investing in the maintenance to make sure that facilities and structures are safe for people to use, and that's safe for everyone to use, regardless of their race or economic status. But we have particularly divested and not invested in maintenance of structures in the Black community. So we've got some making up to do when it comes to investing in the infrastructure in the Black community, and that's a direct result of the importance or lack of importance we've attached over the years to things that happen in the Black community.
You know, I grew up in South Lumberton, and when they had a flood there, and you say, "Oh Lord," you know, there's a problem with the flood. But when you trace it back, many of the communities of color are in low-lying areas. They're near the river. They don't have infrastructure there. They are it's a vestige, and you don't realize it. You know, you just grow up with these things. When people bought where they could buy land, and the land that was available to them was the lowland. And so many of those communities grew up, and some of them have thrived there. Princeville, down there where Valor stays, it was the land that was available to people then. But it's not that they wanted the lowland; it's the lowland that they could afford. So many of these communities are affected adversely by policies that were begun long ago. So I think this has it can be transformative in terms of these communities that have struggled to survive.
And because of redlining, some of the vestiges of the adverse impact of redlining, in other words, denying uh, Black people access to buying homes in the areas as you described, still remains with us. So we have to get beyond that, and I think this is an opportunity to do that if this bill is passed.
So turning our attention to what we've seen, particularly since the presidential election of 2016, we've seen more women become engaged and involved in the political process. We now have Black women mayors in Boston, Massachusetts, in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and just recently, a woman was elected mayor in St. Louis, Missouri. Please share your views on the increasing Black political engagement by Black women. And of course, we'll start with Commissioner Harris with this one.
Yes, I've been very proud to be able to read and see that women have become more engaged. I remember when I first became a commissioner, I was the only female on my board for 8 years. Even with the Alliance, I was the only female for a while with the executive group and had to try to keep these men on balance. I went to a study where it said North Carolina, we only had 6% of elected officials were women. And I thought, why is that? So of course we had to start engaging and talking with women and explaining why they are needed, because they bring something different to the table. They think a little differently than men. But I believe that women have started to find that not only can they drive that truck on the road, they can actually make decisions to help people. And so, as I brought up my three daughters, I've made sure I have dragged them to every summit so that they can soak up some of that information and soak up some of that leadership so that they can realize that they too can make the change or be the change. So I believe that the women who were elected have just started something that little girls can look and say, there's something else that I can do to help my community. I can get elected official.
And Leader Thompson.
Well, I'm happy to see the women elected to these high positions. They have always been capable. They always had the ideas. Sometimes the voters have been slow to recognize their leadership abilities, but I'm even more pleased that the people that have been elected are stand-up people. They don't, you know, they represent their communities. They advocate for things that are transformative that will make them better. And so I think that's really important. Whether it's male or female or thing, you got to stand up for what you think is right. And so I am very pleased that the women who have been elected have not only been capable, they have been people who advocate for improvements in their community.
And Leader Carey.
Well, I'm also happy to see women rise into the top positions in many organizations, not just in the elected field, but in many different organizations. And I think it's about time we see that happen, and it's going to happen even more. But when you think about it, it all boils down to work and who's willing to work to see their goals become achieved. And you know, women have, at least in my experience, have always been some of the hardest workers in any organization that I've been a part of. You know, as I mentioned, Viola was, you know, kind of, you know, had her shoulder to the wheel in the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners before there was an alliance. And I couldn't have done what I did in the association or the alliance without Viola and people like Viola, because women have always been hard workers to try to achieve the goals on behalf of the Black community. So, you know, I'm happy to see them finally getting the recognition and getting the opportunity to serve in the leadership roles of the organizations in which they've been working in for so many years.
Well, our final question is about our future and the leadership of that future. In 2021, Black millennials and those in Generation Z are still crying about Black lives and wanting us all to know that Black lives matter. What is your perspective about the Black Lives Matter movement? And we're going to start with Leader Thompson because he has on his Black Lives Matter cap. Leader Thompson.
Well, you know, I support it because I believe the fight continues. You know, we got to fight for voting rights. We got to keep up that fight. We got to fight against the perception that white is more. You know, they're smarter. You know, that their water's colder. And we have to fight for all these things. The fight continues, and I think the young people, the Black Lives Matter movement, is a commitment to keep up. We will not rest until this is done, and so therefore we have to continue. It's not only Black people; it's white people. If America is going to stand up to its promise, we have to make it an inclusive America. And that means that Black interests need to be advanced. We can't be at the bottom. We got to be there with everybody else. And Black Lives Matter, I'm supportive because I think it keeps up the fight.
Commissioner Harris.
Uh, Black Lives Matter because I am Black. My children are Black. My brothers and sisters are Black. And they all matter. Even those that I don't even know their names don't matter. I remember when my mother fought for us to have a new high school down in Blake. The Caucasians wanted to build a new high school, but they didn't want us to attend. And so I remember my mother coming in there and talking when they had the community come together and express to them that it's just as important for her child, who was me, to have a good education as it was for the people down the street who she had taken care of all of their lives. So that's when I first understood that Black Lives Matter. And it still matters today.
And finally, Leader Carey.
Thank you, Senator Foushee. Certainly Black Lives Matter, and I'm very proud of the young people, all of the people who took to the streets to emphasize the fact that Black lives do matter. And I've heard many of them say that this Black Lives Matter item is a movement, it's not a moment. And I think that's certainly appropriate because we need to maintain the movement to keep the focus and emphasis on the fact that we're not going to accept this white privilege that many of the people in this country espouse. You know, I've been reading a book called Caste, and that book, I can't remember the author right now, but it chronicles how, what?
Isabella Wilkerson.
That's right, Isabella Wilkerson.
I read the book too. Yeah, it's good. It's a good book.
It's a good book, but it was hard for me to read because I'd read a little bit and I'd stop because I was so angry because, you know, this white privilege and this assumption that many white folk have that, you know, there's a place for them and there's a place for us, and the place for them is not the place for us. And I think that, you know, that started many years, even before this was a country. And it continues even today. So the folk who were hitting the streets to emphasize the fact that Black Lives Matter will need to continue, and it shouldn't stop just because, you know, there have been no marches in the streets lately. So, you know, it needs to continue to maintain the emphasis that Black lives do matter.
So that was my final question, but given the responses that you all have shared, and being where we are in the wake of the George Floyd murder trial, we've seen the unrest that have been going on now for just over about 18 months. How do you think we as a country, and certainly the state of North Carolina, how do we move forward with the conversation about criminal justice reform and what we need to do about policing in our state? And I won't choose a person to start with that one. I'll just let Leader Thompson jump right in because I sense that he has an answer that he's been wanting to get out for a while now.
Well, that sounds like choosing to me. But anyway, I would say that it is atrocious that we have so many of our people incarcerated. But you know, I believe you know, if you are a criminal, you need to be punished. But that doesn't mean that because you're Black, you're criminal.
That's right.
It does not mean that. And I think We are victims of over policing because of people fear that somehow we're going to take something from them. We only want equality. And so therefore we want to be treated like any other person. And so therefore I do believe social justice, uh, uh, this trial has shown that sometimes in an effort uh, to show who's boss, you can go over the top. And I would say that we need to be mindful that being black is not being a criminal. Being black is being a person, just like anybody else. We were created like for God, just like anybody else. So if you want to take it up with somebody, take it up with God if you get there. But I would think that probably, I was created divinely, and I do not accept that my creation is any less than anything else. So I would say that in terms of criminal justice, we should do what we can to make sure that things are fair and that we don't react because of people's color or people's language or anything. If you commit a crime, we'll deal with that. But if not, we will not think just because you're a different color than I am, or you speak a different language than I do, that you're a criminal. That is not true. You're a criminal if you create crime. You're not a criminal for who you are. But that's all I have to say about that.
Leader Carey.
Well, unfortunately, in this country, in our justice system, you get about as much justice as you can afford. And it shouldn't be like that. And the book Caste chronicles the fact that this bias in the system has been around for a long, long time. And the way the system is built, it assumes that if you're black, you're suspect and you're most likely a criminal. And it shouldn't be that way. And unfortunately, also, uh, we have come to the point where there are many people in this country who accept the fact that if you're perceived as a criminal, if you're black, you're perceived to be a criminal. And we need to continue to reinforce the fact that elections matter because it's going to take some time to change and begin to chip away at the foundation of the bigotry that's in systematized in our justice system and in many other areas of our lives. So, we need to emphasize the fact that elections matter, and it gives us a chance to begin to chip away at the foundation that chronicles the fact that you're perceived to be a criminal if you're black. And elections will help us to begin to chip away at that myth that if you're black, you're a criminal.
And Commissioner Harris.
One of the things we've got to do in our community is start helping our young people to understand that they're somebody and they come from a long line of people who don't mind hard work because they know to be successful, you've got to put something in. And we've heard so much about a black on black crime. Our people, young people, have to be given the same opportunity as people in those affluent neighborhoods. They've got to be given the same opportunity for education, for jobs, and without that, crime creeps in. So we've got to make sure that our family, if we can get them to come back together as family, and to make sure that we let each one of them know the importance that they play in society. Society needs all of us. The light brown, dark brown, the color doesn't matter. We're all one, and we've got to realize that we matter. And they said, let's make it matter at the ballot box.
So thank you all for that. It was an impromptu question, but certainly a question of today, and one that you all have answered well and given the kind of guidance that we can all use to go forward. I would ask now that if each of you would give any final thoughts about the North Carolina Black Alliance, where we go from here, and what we believe is important to our communities now that we're moving forward through an era with a new administration, with a governor who has put in place some of the ideals that we thought had been lost by the wayside, and just your thoughts on how we move forward as a state, ensuring that communities of color matter in the real scheme of things and decisions that are being made.
I'll start. We've got to engage our youth, our millennials, and we've got to let all of them know that you've got to help your brother come up. If you've already made it, don't just sit there and say, well, I've made it, you're on your own. Each one of us has to reach one and teach one, as we were trying to say. And I believe that where we go from here is up, because we're going to pull another brother, another sister up with us.
Well, I'll go next. And, I remember a few years ago when the NAACP celebrated its 100th birthday, a lot of people were asking, is the NAACP still necessary? Is it still needed? And, I was kind of appalled by that question because, I knew that the question was out of the question, because there's no doubt in my mind and many other people's minds who are still suffering that the NAACP was still needed. And I feel the same way about the Alliance. Whether it's my vision that we form to increase the number of Black elected officials, or my vision that we needed to improve the communication among Black elected officials so that we'd have a common vision of where we wanted to go. Whether those goals are still relevant, we still need the Alliance to work on those issues. And there are many other issues that the Alliance have begun to work on since in the last 15 years. And I think that, the need for the work that the Alliance is doing will not only continue, it will accelerate as these continuous attacks on voting rights and access to the polls accelerate in the coming years. And they will accelerate because the fear of the browning of this country has increased in the last few years.
And finally, Leader Thompson.
Well, I would just say it ain't over. That there seems to be work still needs to be done. The disparities that we talked about 15 years ago still exist. Disparities in healthcare, in wealth, in housing, in criminal justice, in education, you name it. Those disparities still exist, and as long as they still exist, we got to still keep we got to still keep plowing, because there's work to be done, and we have to still stay in the fight. I spoke to my naivety as a young person, that I thought these things would be solved, but they're still with us. And I think we got to still keep on keeping on until we resolve these things these disparities cannot be allowed to continue.
Well, thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for sharing with us your vision that has manifested into what we see as a North Carolina Black Alliance, manifested in what we see as a convening of not just Black elected officials, but interested parties in ensuring that communities of color are successful. We thank you for this kind of work, understanding that we have to continue our focus on the fight as we face our future. And thank you for everyone who joined us today.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you for your leadership and for chairing this session today.
Good to see all of you.